The following program covers the month of July 1861 from a Grand Theater perspective. It's July 1st, 1861. Union General Irvin McDowell has large numbers of troops gathered at Washington. Down the road from McDowell is Beauregard's Confederate Army at Manassas Junction, Virginia. In the Shenandoah Valley, General Patterson is advancing his force from Hagerstown, Maryland, toward Martinsburg, which was Virginia then, but West Virginia today. Western Virginia is in a state of flux in July 1861. In 1861, this region was part of Virginia, but Unionists in Wheeling, backed by incoming Union forces in the region, is pulling the western part of Virginia back into the Union. Western Virginia is in the process of leaving the Confederacy, but it is not yet officially the state of West Virginia, so we will refer to this area of Virginia as Western Virginia. In Patterson's front in the Shenandoah Valley is Joseph E. Johnston near Winchester, Virginia. In the Appalachian Mountains, McClellan has a Union force in Buckhannon in Western Virginia. Opposing McClellan in the mountains is Robert Garnett. We will take a closer look at the Western Virginia mountain region. McClellan is here in Buckhannon. McClellan's opponent, Garnett, is forming positions at two mountain passes. One position is at Laurel Hill near Belington, and the other is at Rich Mountain near Beverly in Western Virginia. We will zoom back out. Out west, Union forces under General Lyon have pushed Confederates into southwestern Missouri and northwest Arkansas. Lyon is moving Union forces in the direction of Springfield, Missouri. On the rebel side, Governor Claiborne Jackson of Missouri, expelled by Union forces from Jefferson City, is with the Confederate soldiers in southwest Missouri. The Confederates under Pierce are forming in the region of Maysville, Arkansas. Ben McCulloch is moving Confederate troops from Fort Smith, Arkansas, northward to join Confederate troops there and oppose Lyon. On July 1st, at Baltimore, Maryland, the Board of Police, suspected of supporting secessionist activities in that city, are arrested by order from General Winfield Scott. The police headquarters in Baltimore was found to be housing a secret arsenal, which included cannons and hundreds of muskets and rifles. We will take a closer look at the Shenandoah region. July 2nd, General Patterson, commanding Union forces in the Shenandoah region, crosses the Potomac River at Williamsport, Maryland. Patterson's objective is to reach Martinsburg in Western Virginia. His opponent, Joseph E. Johnston, is in the area of Winchester. Just above Martinsburg, at Falling Waters in Western Virginia, Patterson's forward line encounters rebel cavalry and a small detachment of infantry. A skirmish ensues. The Union Army is having its first meeting with Jeb Stuart's cavalry and Colonel Thomas Jackson's infantry. July 3rd, 1861. General Patterson is now at Martinsburg in West Virginia. We will step back to a national view. It's the 4th of July, 1861, 85 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. In Washington, the 37th Congress is now in session. Representatives from the southern states have all essentially left Congress, but Senator Andrew Johnson of Tennessee remains in the Senate as a loyal Unionist. So Tennessee, despite its secession, retains representation in the Senate. Congress authorizes the enlistment of 500,000 troops. Secretary of the Navy Gideon Welles proposes that Congress examine a new possibility, cladding steamships in iron. We will take a closer look at the Virginia Theater. On the 4th of July, at Harper's Ferry in Western Virginia, a small skirmish occurs between expedition parties from both sides. The town remains a borderland. On the same day, also in the Shenandoah Valley, Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston recommends two officers for promotion due to their outstanding competence. One is Lieutenant Colonel Jeb Stuart, and the other is Colonel Thomas Jackson. On July 5th, in Buckhannon, General McClellan, commanding the Department of the Ohio, writes to Washington. He outlines his strategic thinking. He says, "No prospect of a brilliant victory shall induce me to depart from my intention of gaining success by maneuvering rather than by fighting. I will not throw these raw men of mine into the teeth of artillery and entrenchments if it is possible to avoid." We will now go to southwest Missouri, where the Western armies are congregating. Springfield, Missouri, where General Lyon is directing Union forces, is here. On the Confederate side, Governor Jackson has thousands of recruits near Carthage, Missouri. On July 5th, Union General Franz Sigel leads his German-American troops against Carthage. Sigel's Germans are well trained, but Jackson maintains numerical advantage. The South carries the field. At Carthage, the carnage has again risen to new heights. The battle results in nearly 250 casualties. On the same day, July 5th, McCulloch's Arkansas troops capture Union soldiers at Neosho, Missouri. McCulloch now has thousands of Arkansas troops in southwest Missouri, a day's march from Jackson and Carthage. We will zoom back out. On July 6th, John Fremont is given command of the Department of Missouri. St. Louis is the headquarters of this department. We will now take a closer look at the Appalachian Theater in Western Virginia. On July 6th, in Buckhannon, George McClellan has deduced that Garnett has significant entrenchments at Rich Mountain, some 20 miles to the southeast. McClellan plans to attack Garnett at both Rich Mountain and Laurel Hill. July 7th, near Bealington in Western Virginia, Union soldiers under Morris are approaching Garnett's position at Laurel Hill. We will slide east over the mountains to the Shenandoah Valley and the Eastern Virginia Theater. In the east, McDowell is at Washington with 30,000 men. Beauregard is at Manassas with 20,000 men. In the Shenandoah Valley, Patterson is at Martinsburg with 14,000 men, and Johnston is at Winchester with 11,000 men. July 9th. At Martinsburg in Western Virginia, Patterson's officers see a problem in their front. Joseph E. Johnston is at Winchester, Virginia. If Johnston marches south from Winchester, he can access the Manassas Gap Railroad, which then connects directly to Manassas, where Beauregard is stationed. Patterson's engineers estimate that the Confederates can move 12,000 men from Winchester to Manassas, or from Manassas to Winchester, in a single day. So if Patterson advances against Johnston, Beauregard can rail reinforcements to Winchester. Likewise, if McDowell attacks Beauregard, Johnston can rail thousands of reinforcements to Manassas. Even though McDowell has a larger army than Beauregard, Johnston can train his men to Manassas and nullify McDowell's numerical advantage. We will slide back west over the mountains to McClellan's front. July 11th. McClellan and Rosecrans hit Confederate positions at Rich Mountain, near Beverly in Western Virginia. McClellan secures Rich Mountain, taking many prisoners. Later in the day, at Laurel Hill, near Bealington, Morris is threatening Garnett's position. But Garnett hears of the defeat at Rich Mountain. Garnett abandons Laurel Hill, attempting to escape. Morris pursues. July 12th. McClellan occupies Beverly in Western Virginia. On the next day, July 13th, Morris catches Garnett's men at Corricks Ford near Parsons in Western Virginia. Garnett is killed, the first general to be killed in the Civil War. The Confederate army in the Appalachian region is defeated. McClellan's army has secured Western Virginia from the Confederacy, making that region's aim at statehood a high possibility. In addition, McClellan has secured the critical stations along the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad through the mountains. The train is back in operation, connecting Washington to the grain fields of the Midwest. McClellan's actions have more immediate results. On July 13th, Virginia again has 2 senators in Congress. In Wheeling, Francis Pierpont's pro-Union administration is returning Virginia's representation to Washington. Thus, despite secession, there are now congressmen in Washington from Virginia and Tennessee. 3 congressmen from Virginia also take their seats in the House of Representatives. While 11 states have left the Union this past year, one state appears, in part, to be returning to the Union. On the same day, out west, Nathaniel Lyon is at Springfield, Missouri. He assumes command of Union forces in southwestern Missouri. We will take a closer look at the Shenandoah Theater. On July 14th in Martinsburg, General Patterson wires Washington. He explains the current predicament, stating, General Johnston, who is now pretending to be engaged in fortifying at Winchester, but is prepared to retire beyond striking distance if I should advance far. So Patterson is in a fix. On the one hand, he is required to show force against Johnston and keep him at bay from Beauregard and Manassas. On the other hand, if Patterson advances, Johnston can simply slip away to the railroad. But orders are orders. Patterson will advance against Johnston, but he is uneasy and has a backup in mind: Charlestown in western Virginia. Charlestown gives Patterson a link to the railroad that can swing him back to Harper's Ferry. From there, he can advance to Hillsborough, Virginia, which links up by rail to Washington to rejoin McDowell if necessary. Patterson's unease is causing issue with Washington. General Scott in Washington wants him to put pressure on Johnston. July 15. Patterson has advanced to Bunker Hill, Virginia. Patterson's forces are now just 12 miles from Joseph E. Johnston's Confederate forces at Winchester. We will take a step back to a wider view of the Virginia front. By July 15, McClellan has advanced from Beverly in western Virginia to Huttonsville. Also, by July 15, the remnants of Garnett's forces have pulled back to Monterey, Virginia. We can see how far south McClellan has advanced this early. While McDowell and Patterson remain in a kind of checked position near the Potomac River, McClellan has penetrated deep into Virginia. McClellan's name is being spoken in Washington. By now, Winfield Scott's Anaconda Plan has been discussed in newspapers and in the public. Scott sees the South's geography as too widespread for an invasion. Rather, he proposes to envelop the South by blockade at sea and along the Mississippi River. The South, according to General Scott, cut off from the rest of the world, will eventually fall. However, the press and many in Congress are clamoring that the Confederate army at Manassas be crushed at once. Both the East and the West fronts have immediate pressures. In the East, the Confederate Congress will soon be in session at Richmond. Many in the press and in Congress want the rebel army smashed before the Confederate Congress can meet. Meanwhile, out west, in Springfield, Missouri, General Lyon is present with some 7,000 men. However, many of his men have nearly completed their 3-month enlistments. It is feared that the Confederate forces in southwest Missouri facing him may soon swell to 30,000 men, with large numbers coming from Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Texas. We will take a closer view of the Virginia theater. July 16. McDowell is now marching the army from Washington toward Manassas. July 17. McDowell occupies Fairfax, Virginia. In the Shenandoah Valley, Patterson is now at Charlestown in western Virginia, where he is now linked to the rail line. Patterson has the same issue that the other Union forces have. The 3-month enlistments are about to be up, and his force will soon be dwindled. Night falls. In the wee morning hours of July 18, at Winchester, Virginia, Johnston receives a telegraph message from Richmond informing him that Union forces are marching on Manassas. Johnston is requested to train his men to Manassas to reinforce Beauregard. Joseph E. Johnston's forces are leaving Winchester. The sun rises. During the day, Johnston moves his army from Winchester through Ashby's Gap to Piedmont at modern Delaplane, Virginia. Johnston is now on the Manassas Gap Railroad line. Johnston's men begin to board the train in Piedmont. From there, the Manassas Gap Railroad relays his men to Manassas. Beauregard's forces at Manassas are growing with each train arrival. As the day progresses, The Confederate army at Manassas will grow to match McDowell's army that is now approaching it. As the trains are en route from Piedmont to Manassas, first action commences at Manassas, Virginia. We will zoom into the area near Manassas. McDowell's Union troops are at Centerville, Virginia. Bull Run flows here. Manassas Train Junction is to the south. There are multiple fords over Bull Run, but McDowell does not know how fortified they are. On July 18th, Tyler's division advances from Centerville toward Blackburn's ford here. Tyler's division, with Richardson's brigade in front, is to provide reconnaissance on rebel strength. Fire erupts at Blackburn's ford. The Union sustains 83 casualties and pulls back to Centerville. Tyler has just engaged a brigade under James Longstreet. McDowell now knows the Confederates have strong entrenchments and batteries along the fords over Bull Run. Also on July 18th, out west in Bentonville, Arkansas, Confederate General McCulloch ascertains that Nathaniel Lyon is congregating Union forces at Springfield, and they project that Lyon has about 10,000 men. While some Confederate generals like Benjamin McCulloch want to attack Springfield, the rebel forces in Arkansas are still organizing and supplying themselves, so a coordinated attack against Springfield is not yet likely. The Confederates have a regiment of Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians at Scullyville in Indian Territory. On July 19th, at Charlestown in western Virginia, Patterson wires Washington that his 3 months volunteers refuse to serve an hour over their term. Patterson's men have begun mustering out and returning home. On the same day, command in Washington prepares an order to discharge General Patterson. He is to be relieved by General Banks. On July 20th at Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate Congress is now in session. We will go to the Virginia Theater. On July 20th, Joseph E. Johnston arrives by rail in Manassas, Virginia, along with much of the Shenandoah Army. Among the recent arrivals to Manassas is Thomas Jackson's brigade. We will zoom in further to the Manassas-Centerville region. On July 20th, McDowell's army remains at Centerville, Virginia. Bull Run is marked in blue. The fords over Bull Run at Sudley Springs and the Stone Bridge are shown in yellow. McDowell in Centerville has over 30,000 men, but thousands have nearly completed their short enlistments. His men are eating through their rations too quickly. Rumors have spread that Johnston has already joined Beauregard at Manassas, a rumor that is true. Indeed, as the hours pass, more carloads of Confederate troops are arriving at Manassas Junction. In fact, 3 brigades from the Shenandoah Valley have already arrived at Manassas, meaning Beauregard's army has largely matched McDowell's army in size. Night falls on July 20th. It's morning, July 21st. McDowell needs to attack. He will move Tyler's division down the Warrenton Road to Bull Run near the Stone Bridge. Meanwhile, Hunter and Heintzelman's divisions will move northward toward the Sudley Springs ford. Tyler moves forward, making his demonstration at Stone Bridge. Hunter's division crosses Bull Run at Sudley Springs, the lead brigade under Ambrose Burnside. The Union brigades form on the other side of Sudley Springs. Beauregard has shifted his lines as well. Heavy action commences. The Confederate lines pull back. The Union forces push toward the Henry House Hill. McDowell's forces have started strong. However, at the Henry Hill, Thomas Jackson's troops make a stand. General Bernard B., rallying his men, calls out, "There is Jackson, standing like a stone wall. Rally behind the Virginians." Stonewall Jackson's brigade holds the line, suffering terrible casualties. The Union push is burning out. Mix-ups ensue, as Green troops can't distinguish between the ambiguous uniforms. At 4 p.m., a fresh rebel brigade under Smith has arrived by train and is now on the field. To Smith's left is Jubal Early and Jeb Stuart's cavalry. The Confederate counterattack ensues. The Union soldiers hear the rebel yell for the first time. McDowell's troops, whose 3-month enlistments are nearly finished, decide they have fulfilled their contracts. A retreat becomes a full-blown rout. McDowell's troops recross the Bull Run and retreat back to Centreville. The first major battle of the Civil War has ended. In total, the South suffered about 2,000 casualties, while the North suffered about 2,800 casualties, including some 1,200 captured. On the evening of July 21st, McDowell forms a new line at Centreville. That night, McDowell describes his army as a confused mob entirely demoralized. McDowell prepares for a rebel counterattack. We will return to a national view. The United States responds swiftly to the defeat at Bull Run. The next day, July 22nd, in Washington, Lincoln signs a bill calling for 500,000 enlistments. The enlistments will be for 3 years, not 3 months. Washington now knows that this war will not be a simple affair. They are preparing for a long conflict. McDowell will be replaced with George McClellan, the victor of the Appalachian Mountain region. As McClellan departs for Washington, General Rosecrans, the hero of Rich Mountain, is now in command of the Department of the Ohio. In Washington, Congress authorizes military boards to improve officer qualifications. July 23rd. Just 2 days after the Battle of Bull Run, the news has been communicated across the continent in detail. At St. Charles, Missouri, General Pope, overseeing the Union forces in North Missouri, writes to Governor Kirkwood of Iowa. He states, "The unfortunate repulse of our forces at Manassas has aroused the whole secession element in this state to renewed activity. I may be obliged within a few days to move the whole force in North Missouri into St. Louis to protect that city from civil tumult and bloodshed." Also on July 23rd, at Memphis, Tennessee, General Polk plans to send General Pillow up the Mississippi River to secure New Madrid, Missouri. General Polk intends to make New Madrid a base of Confederate operations on the Mississippi River. On July 25th, at Harper's Ferry in western Virginia, General Banks relieves Patterson to command forces in the Shenandoah Valley. On July 25th, at St. Louis, John Fremont is officially named Commander of the United States Western Department. On the same day, back in Washington, Congress passes John Crittenden and Andrew Johnson's resolution, stating the aims of the United States are to defend the Constitution and preserve the Union. Congress needs to reassure loyal slave states like Kentucky and Maryland that slavery will not be interfered with. Senator Andrew Johnson is now a critical figure as he remains in the Senate despite the fact that his state of Tennessee has seceded. While the Crittenden-Johnson resolution passed Congress, some Republicans vote no and over 20 congressmen abstain from voting, meaning that this early on in the conflict, there are stirrings in the North that the war is actually about slavery. And the slavery issue is already presenting at the front. By this time at Fort Monroe, the outlying U.S. post near Norfolk, Virginia, some 1,000 contraband or runaway slaves have fled there to Union lines. July 27th. General McClellan is in Washington and assumes command of the Army of the Potomac. The drilling and organization of the Army of the Potomac begins. Also on July 27th, General Lyon in Springfield, Missouri, warns Fremont that a large body of his army is about to complete its enlistment. The men have poor clothing, shoes, and supplies. We will slide to the far west. Way out west on the same day, near Las Cruces in New Mexico Territory, Robert Baylor's Texans captured nearly 500 U.S. soldiers from Fort Fillmore. We will now take a closer look at Missouri. July 28th. New Madrid, Missouri, an important turn on the Mississippi River, is occupied by Pillow's Confederate troops. On the same day, in St. Louis, General Fremont wires Secretary Seward in Washington. Fremont states, "We have plenty of men, but absolutely no arms." Fremont has reason for concern. By July 30th, Confederate troops under Price, Pierce, and McCulloch are now near Cassville, Missouri, just southwest of Lyon's force at Springfield. In addition, General Hardee has yet more Confederate troops at Pocahontas, Arkansas. We will return to a national view. As July 1861 comes to an end, the reality of a long, bloody conflict is unfolding. In Washington, the Army of the Potomac is training under General McClellan. In the West, southern Missouri is a major fault line, with Lyon's Union forces at Springfield, Missouri, opposing Confederate forces at Cassville, Missouri. The Confederates also hold an important turn on the Mississippi River at New Madrid, Missouri. A long war has started.